Good evening, and welcome to the Reel McCoy. I'm your host, Meffistoe, and always with me, my hetero life mate. Yeah, all my feelings. I'm gonna fuck this up again.
I know.
Good evening.
Evening,
What
buddy.
is the Reel McCoy? The Reel McCoy is a weekly movie podcast where we ask you to go and watch a movie. You watch it, come back to us, and we geek out on it, break it down, and we slap it all around. Yes, I fucked it up again. Good evening to Tom from Midnight's Edge. How you doing, sir?
Hello. How's everybody doing?
I'm good.
Good. How you doing, buddy?
It's been quite a week, eh, Tom?
Interesting one's that, yes.
Yeah.
So how are you guys doing?
Yeah. I was just filling up my boy here about all the Nick stuff, and he was like, "Oh, really? Oh, really? Yeah, really. YouTube.
It's
All
a
right.
shit show.
Shit show.
Yeah,
Right.
and Doomcock is being made fun of on She-Hulk, evidently, and other things like that. So it's all over the place.
Oh,
Yeah.
all over the place. Right. So
It's like She-Hulk, a show made for no one.
exactly. Right. So this week we are continuing our spooky month, our Halloween themed month with Nightmare on Elm Street, the third, Dream Warriors.
Yes.
Oh, that was fun. I watched this film 3 times to prepare, and I enjoyed every single minute of it. How many times have you watched it? There we go. There's his nice face.
This week, just twice.
Just twice. Okay.
Yeah.
You were busy, I take it.
Mhm.
Oh, the memorabilia. Love it, Tom.
Nice, Tom.
Very nice. Tom, let me ask you a question. Which one of the Freddy movies do you like the most? Is it you got one favorite one, or?
I'm a huge fan of the franchise, but I mean, I guess the ultimate trilogy for most fans is 1, 3, and New Nightmare. Like those are the
Yeah, that's
The
that's
main ones
pretty
most people-
apropos.
4
I
is
mean-
also a fan favorite, but 3 is probably the one that stands out the most, of course.
Well, it's funny, Tom, too, is those are the ones that had the most influence by Wes Craven. It was 1, 3, and New Nightmare.
I don't think it's coincidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably isn't. For me, it used to be 4, but now I can say definitely it's 3, because I've to prepare. I've went through the first 4. I don't remember the 4th being that dumb. It has great kills though. It has kind of elaborate.
It's a
kills.
good continuity, but yeah, unfortunately, it suffers from coming out. When they made it, it was during a writer's strike, so the script was not
correct.
finished. And so Rennie Harlan just started shooting shit, and yeah, it just kind of came together as it was. But famously, it's the most, it's the biggest of the box offices of all the Nightmare on Elm Street until you get to more of the modern films. But
Yeah,
And that's really just following off the back of the actual success of Dream Warriors, because
Right.
because Freddy's Revenge was a bomb, and
yeah,
I thought it was going to
Dream
be.
Warriors was huge.
I thought Dream
yeah.
Warriors was going to be terrible. They thought like, oh well, New Line Cinema originally, we're going to get this, but I'll just say it now. Originally, what they wanted, Frank Darabont and Russell called out for a $20 million budget. They got $4.5 million. for Dream
Wait.
Warriors.
Is that the same Frank Darabont from Shawshank Redemption? Frank
Yes,
Darabont?
it is.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting. All right. Okay. Let's jump into this movie. Before we do that, we have a little segment called Behind the Screens.
Production take 2.
All right. Behind the Screens is where we go to plugs. Again, yes, I'll do the plugs. Behind the Screens is where we turn down all my feelings and we get the lowdown on everything behind the screens. Now, I prepared everything this week, of course, but of course, I didn't put in Tom's digits, so I'll do that later. But if you want to follow the show and deal with us, you can always at me on Twitter or at me on Instagram at Meffistoe79. And you
Real
can email the
professional.
show at I'm professional at the Reel McCoy podcast at gmail.com. And you can follow Tom on Midnight's Edge. I have the links down below in the description. Just click on the thing and it will take you to Midnight's Edge or Midnight's Edge After Dark. Or, of course, a fan favorite, personal fan favorite, Midnight's Edge Radio. I love that fucking show, Tom. Yes, that'll be the plugs. I will prepare it for the end of the show. Don't worry. It's there. So go ahead. Everything behind the scenes.
Well, as we discussed before, Wes Craven was really involved with this as he co-wrote this with Darabont and Russell.
Well, there's a little bit more to it than that, but yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm getting into it. Because he actually wanted to be involved because he actually wanted this to be the end of the series. Craven's first concept was basically, Tom, seeing New Nightmare was basically the basis of New Nightmare. He wanted Freddy to be out in the real world, and originally it was actually supposed to have it was all centered around a bunch of kids actually committing suicide, which they did actually keep, if you notice, in the first scenes with Nancy walking into the hospital with Dr. Neal and I just forgot his name. Lawrence Fishburne's character, Max. Max. They mentioned on the radio about a string of teen suicides.
Yeah.
Which is a callback to the original script. Nancy was not supposed to be any kind of mental health professional or even a grad student at all in the original script. Donald Thompson knew about Freddy in the original script and was aware of the fact that he was haunting the kids. He didn't play any kind of games or anything about it. There's actually supposed to be a full romance between Neil and Nancy in the first one. In fact, there was actually supposed to be a sex scene between Neil and Nancy. Joey and Kincaid were supposed to be killed, and basically the only survivor of the entire incident was going to be Kristen, and that was it. Because Nancy was also supposed to die after killing Freddy with his own glove, which kind of was used, but that's more used in New Nightmare, how she actually did die. So
yeah. Okay.
Yep. Patricia Arquette was close to being recast, but Russell refused. They were going to recast her with Winona Ryder.
Oh.
Which is funny because Russell got into it with her on her first night of acting because she couldn't remember her lines because they made her wait till 3 a.m.
No, it was 4:30 in the morning because they kept having to delay doing the setup for prop scenes.
Yeah.
So it's like, which I was going to mention that Patricia Arquette, the way she seems like she's overly tired in the first scene, she wasn't acting. She was desperately that tired because they were shooting at 4:45 in the morning at that point in time.
Charlie Sheen style from Ferris Bueller.
Yep.
She kept forgetting her lines and they had to give her cue cards. Yeah.
Cards.
And,
yeah.
Yeah, it didn't sound like Chuck was too happy about it, but
no.
No. Okay.
Originally, there was actually going to be a She Freddy with the scene with Joey.
Okay.
How would it? What, you got tongue tied? No, it was actually they were going to actually have a full female Freddy mask. But they said.
Actually, it was more like Robert Englund's face mask on top of this actress, and it just looked really bad.
It looked really weird, yeah.
There's pictures of it out there.
Yeah.
Again, I'd much rather have what we got because it was gorgeous in 80s.
Well, there was also the effects. I don't know if Tom, I'm sure you know about this, but the actual doll that they made for Kristen's first nightmare at the end where she's holding the little girl and she looks down and it's a little skeleton. They actually made a desiccated looking like corpse off of pictures from corpses from Auschwitz. They decided not to use it because it was way too unnerving.
Yeah.
So they just took a skull and glued a wig on.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Which is probably one of the cheapest effects in the whole film. Like of all of the because that's one thing is this movie for the $4.5 million that they had to make it. The effects in this film for 1987, there's still times like when I was watching it last night, I'm going back and rewinding and stuff. How the fuck did they do that? Like, because at that time, it just for them to be able to do some of these effects was nearly impossible. But a lot of it's sleight of hand stuff. You know, when I rewind it and go back and see, it's like, okay. You know, and of course I know some of it. There is a lot of great footage out there. I think Kevin Yeager had put out a bunch of video from, so you can like watch them shooting the whole Freddy snake scene and everything out there online. It's really cool. Yeah.
Oh, what's really funny too is the snake that you mentioned it. I was going to bring it up later, but bring it up now. They had to cover it in slime because the MPAA thought it was too phallic.
Oh, well, it was something they decided on the set because, well, they meant it to look like what it looked like. Like that was not a real secret. But the thing is when Kevin Yeager did the maquette was in green clay. So looking at it, you're like, oh yeah, that works. But then when they got it on this set, they got this big, huge, 20-foot long penis. Because it's pink. Like, fuck, this looks a hell of a lot more like what we meant it to look like than what we meant it to look like it. So they're like, well, do whatever you can. They start slamming green slime and everything they can. That's why it has all this green slime and crap all over it in the movie.
Yep. Yeah.
Still better than the anaconda in Anaconda.
Yes, that's true.
It is one of the best. It is one of the best like snake effects I've ever seen in a movie. Even beats Beetlejuice, which came out 2 years later. If you ask me, really.
I don't know.
That's fair.
I personally like
a lot of Beetlejuice is done in. A lot of that is just stop motion. So to me, this being like all live action and full sized, like the only thing that's not like done in camera, like exactly as is the reversal shot of Kristen being chewed up, right? Like they did it in reverse. Yeah. That's the only thing that's not done in like real time on camera forward. And that's just a trick. Is all it was. But
yeah. And what's also really cool is another trick that they pulled, Tom, was in the mirror scene.
Oh,
that was one of the scenes that's so amazing. Yeah.
Without CGI, what they did was they actually used Mylar in order to have the juxtaposition over the camera in order to get the split screen effect. So it looked like part of him was in the mirror and part of him was out of the mirror. That's why you can tell with the discoloration too.
I thought
they're really just reflecting the film onto the other side of the picture. Yeah, it's not really an actual reflect.
Yeah, but I for a minute there, because I've got I'm guessing I've got a remastered version or something. It looked really good, like a really, really, really good CGI effect going into a mirror, but there's gaps in it. That is
there was no CGI. Like it was all practical.
No. That's why I said it looks very advanced for that time.
Yeah. Other notes. Zsa Zsa Gabor did not rehearse any of her lines. Didn't even bother learning any of it. Dick Cavett. The only reason why she was on there because Dick Cavett was the one who's like, well, if I'm gonna have an actress in this bit, I want Zsa Zsa on. I was like, okay, we can get her.
Do you know the reason for
Gabor,
that?
Well, Dick Cavett was always just a big fan of Zsa Zsa Gabor.
It's not true.
Oh, really?
He said because that was part of the deal is he got to pick who his guest was.
Oh, because I always thought it was because
he said I picked Zsa Zsa Gabor because I think she's so fucking stupid I would never have her on my show to begin with. So if I get to kill her, it's gonna be Zsa Zsa Gabor. And they're like, all right.
That's good. That's even better. I thought it was the polar opposite.
I've heard him say it straight from his mouth, so that's not like even urban legend. He legitimately, that's why he picked her.
Excellent.
He's like, I would never interview her for my show because she's such a dimwit. Like,
oh, that's great.
Well, and the fact too.
I was kind of surprised because I haven't seen the movie in so long. The last time I've seen it, it was like I was 14, 15. Rewatching it, I see the credits and say like Zsa Zsa Gabor. It's like, when is Zsa Zsa Gabor in this movie? Who would hire this woman?
One
for
tiny little scene. That's
Dick Cavett.
That's it. Dick Cavett.
Yeah, the Dick Cavett.
So also since Zsa Zsa didn't know, she didn't read the script. She didn't read her lines. Had no concept of why she was on set. The first time she saw Robert Englund in the Freddy makeup, she was terrified. She didn't know what production she was on.
Oh my
Well, I
god.
mean, she was doing a lot of cameos and crap back then, so I'm
Yeah.
sure she didn't.
Mark Shustrom, who was also working on Evil Dead 2 at the time, which, Tom, I'm glad you showed your the prop that you have there, stole one of the gloves, took it off set, and that's why it appears actually in Evil Dead 2.
Funnily enough, they believe actually they only had like a couple sets of gloves. They didn't have very many early on.
Yeah.
They had the real ones, and then they had a dulled set, and I think they had like a semi-retractable set, but like they never used the retractable one because it never quite worked like it was supposed to. That I know. And the one that got disappeared was, they believe, the one that is the main one, because if you watch the first two movies, it's the same glove.
Yep.
The glove went missing somewhere during the second movie, and that's when they were shooting Evil Dead. So they're pretty sure that I can't remember the guy's name, but he took it from the set and never got it back.
Yep, it was Mark Shustrom. He never got it back.
And so they ended up, eventually it wound up, believe it or not, in the hands of a collector, a guy who had been collecting a lot of the gloves over the years, and he had it verified by the guy who put it together. I can't remember the guy's name, but there's a video of it out there where they weren't sure if it was the real one. They thought it was maybe a stunt glove or something like that. But he went and checked it out. He looked at the rivets and all these things, and he's like, nope, this is the one. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, no, this is the actual screen-worn Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2 glove. He's like, you're shitting me. He's like, I thought it was just one of the stunt gloves or something like that. He's like, nope, this is the actual screen-used.
It's the real one.
The one that's been missing for like 30 years. Like, this is the one.
Oh, I wonder how much will it go on auction for?
God, it would probably be worth millions at this point. Maybe at least $1 million. I don't know about millions, but at least close to $1 million, I would say. Because that's one of those props that.
Because Freddy Krueger is such an iconic horror character that you was like, it's not the seventh one. It's the first one, film worn, all that authentic. Well, we'll see if it comes up on Pawn Stars or anything.
Yeah. So other things, I know, Tom, you're aware of this. A lot of the puns and one-liners from Robert Englund were actually ad-libbed in this one.
Some of them, yeah.
Most notably is "Welcome to prime time, bitch."
Oh, that's a great line. That's a great line.
Yeah, because Englund has said, most of the time, like a majority of the time, the lines that he does in the movies are in the script. He goes, but the one time that he remembers improvising that is the most famous, of course, is that line, because the line in the script was like, "You're in TV now, girl," or something like that. It's your big break, Jennifer. You're in TV now, or something like that. So he reworked it to "You're in the prime time, bitch" line. God,
I could see Robert Englund being a little bit miffed at this point too, because he did a spec script for the third Nightmare on Elm Street that guy's categorically turned down as well.
Well, not only that, they started shooting Nightmare 2 without him. They treated Robert Englund like crap at first, because they're like, we don't need him again. We'll just get another stuntman. And there's one shot of the stuntman in the second film, and you can tell because it's bad.
Yes.
And they're like, he's lumbering like Frankenstein, and he's like just not quite right.
It's like it's not Jason, it's Freddy. Yeah.
In one of the shots, I think it's in the second one.
Scene.
In the shower, in the shower scene where the makeup doesn't fit the face, so the mask doesn't really fit the face, and you're like, wait a minute, are they trying to? Because the whole point of the second one is an amalgamation between the hero or the anti-hero and Freddy himself, and it's like, okay, are they trying to do some sort of an amalgamation? But then you see Freddy, and it's Robert Englund, and you can tell it's him. It's like, okay, what's going on here? Yeah, I guess it's that. I guess.
So then when it came to the third film, he got a special billing. I think he got a little bit more money out of it.
Or more money.
He actually got a contract then, because from there on out, he was playing Freddy for like the next 3-4 years straight. Like he probably spent more time in the makeup than out of it.
Yeah. Well, there is a story of him actually on the set of Dream Warriors falling asleep during makeup, waking up and scaring himself.
There's also a story of the kids all went out to eat once, and Taryn was still in her punk makeup.
Yeah.
Everybody was scared shitless of her.
And also, apparently, all the male cast members, all the guys, were absolutely in love with Patricia Arquette and would actually go to Robert Englund to try to get tips on how to ask her out.
How old was she then? 22, 21?
Yeah, I think they're all in their early 20s. Yeah.
20s, yeah.
All of them were real young. All right. Anything else before
some other fun stuff. I know we had talked about this Meph as something that we'll maybe do next year for Halloween, but at one point in time, I think it's minute 38, when Jennifer is sitting there watching TV, she's actually watching a scene from Critters.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, I did notice that, and I was like,
which had barely been out at that point, which is funny. But
yeah, it came out 86, I think.
86 the year before. Yep.
I think was that the only reason why it was in there, because it was another New Line Cinema film, Tom?
It was really at that time kind of the only other hit they had besides Nightmare on Elm Street that wasn't an acquired film.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, a short history to this. Nightmare on Elm Street was pretty much, I mean, New Line had produced a few movies before that, like Alone in the Dark and a couple other ones, but nothing really hit big. And I think they had some other outside distribution help or whatever. But Nightmare on Elm Street, the first one, was the first time Robert, like from top to bottom, Robert Shea of New Line Cinema, took on a production. And so he owned that all outright. So Nightmare 2 and 3 come along and they really built New Line Cinema. The third film was so successful that it turned them from a little indie into one of the little majors, a mini major basically at that point. And Nightmare 4 on the heels of that, and they had a few other great hits with like Critters was a decent sized hit for them because they made it for next to nothing, and it made. I just checked.
Yes, it came out April 1986, and it's New Line Cinema.
New Line Cinema, yeah. So okay, it makes sense.
That's the reason why. So that was another one of their productions, and they had done a couple other movies to that point. But yeah, Nightmare 3 was the movie that really kind of went ba-boom, because people don't even realize, like, that was in the top 10 movies of 87. For a little independent film like that was crazy. It was the first time I think
8 or 9. 8 or 9.
Because wasn't it
opened?
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, it's opened for like 10 or 15, and then
which was crazy at that time,
and made about 50-ish, I think. And
you guys got to understand, 15 for an opening at that time was nothing to sneeze at. That's like
that's a lot of money.
70 million opening now.
Yeah,
making back triple its budget on the first weekend, that was gigantic then.
And you have to understand, it's the third iteration of a horror movie, where, horror movie is kind of hard to sell back then as something legitimately a box office thing. Because
Freddy had this
not as today, right?
Yeah. Freddy had this weird thing about it. Like, it was almost like the moment Nightmare on Elm Street, because I was like, I don't even remember a time before Freddy, but it didn't even come out until I was 4. Right? Like, but see, as soon as Freddy came, like Nightmare on Elm Street, it was like he was part of the zeitgeist, like instantly. It was just one of those things that for some reason it just tapped right away. I mean, it took Friday the 13th a little while to find its footing with Jason and all that business. And we all kind of knew who Jason was, but Freddy, for some reason, just was like a phenomenon. And again, looking at that box office with the opening of part 3, as we were saying, and I believe it was the first time a slasher film had opened at number 1 at the box office, if you don't count things like Jaws or Exorcist as horror films. So for it to do that was just insane. And then of course from there it just went up and up and up when New Line eventually did like Ninja Turtles and things like that, and then it ended up becoming the highest grossing independent film of all time. Which I think Nightmare held that before that, along with Halloween just before that. So like, it was just kind of one of those things that was a rolling motion. But the script was a big nightmare in and of itself. I know you kind of jumped over a lot of that, but there was actually 2 sets of writers on this.
Yes,
it started with Wes Craven and his writing partner Bruce Davidson at the time, and Bruce Davidson's actually a writer actor of other things too, and he's a weird cat. And the script that they had come up with for the first original draft was dark, demonic, and just ruthless. Like
it's so different because this movie is, for a horror film, even though it does have a little bit of those themes where it's a little bit dark with the whole Amanda Kruger kind of storyline of what basically the first real origins of where Freddy actually comes from, along with a bunch of teenagers who decide to stand up and fight against this horror, this crazy ass maniac guy. Right?
And you really had basically the idea, that concept was kept along, but when Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont come on board, they're like, yeah, this is just you had just too much. Yeah, it was like Freddy wasn't humorous at all. Like he was calling them like sick and twisted names and doing some sick and twisted shit. And the only scene that really kind of stayed similar and that they really liked, and that they give Chuck and Frank credit for taking to that Freddy level that they didn't quite get in the original script. Like one of the most famous death scenes, the puppet scene, for instance.
The marionette.
Yes,
that was Frank taking one of their ideas to the nth degree, and he's Bruce Davidson referred to it as Granguino. He's like, we had the idea in the script that Freddy walked this kid out into traffic like a father, who teaching a child how to walk. He goes, little did we think about like this whole concept of, oh God, the tendons as puppet strings. That's fucking brilliant. Like, so
you tweeted out
the fantasy
picture.
of it.
You tweeted out the picture of the Freddy doll, and I wrote you back. I think it's my favorite death scene of the entire movie because it's so elaborate and so smart to just think about. It's a reversal on what the boy is, because he was making these puppets, right? These string puppets, and he ended up being a string puppet dying because Freddy cut his strings off.
Yeah, and you're right, and that is among the fans' favorite kills, between that one and believe it or not, I think the one that beats it out every time is from Freddy's Dead. Carlos's death.
Oh, yeah.
This is the one I think that usually beats it, but like it's usually like
that's true.
that one, and then this one, and then the TV. So two of the most famous deaths are in this movie,
Jennifer's
of course.
death.
Yeah,
on most lists I've seen, that's usually the order they go.
Yeah, I was thinking too. Also, was that also in the original Wes Craven script? Was that the one that contained the Dream Warrior that was his dream power was to turn into a transformer, or was that the Darabont script that they had to end up dropping that scene due to budget constraints?
I'm not sure on that. I have the original script somewhere, but I haven't read it in years. And again, it's very similar in a respect. Like Kristen's there, like the kids are there, but they really, from my memory, aside just from the darkness of how Freddy is, like, because he's like sadistic. Like there's no wisecracking in him at all.
I was gonna say, and also, did they also include the original ranch house too? That whole bit about Freddy in that one?
Trying to remember offhand. I don't know if that was that one or a different script. But but I do remember like the other big thing was it really keyed in on the suicide bit, right?
Yeah.
Because at that time there was an epidemic among teens, and the suicide rate was real high. So they did key in on that. And that, I know Craven's script really, because like even that, like you were saying earlier, like I think the bit with the kid who cut his eyelids off, I think that's actually in the script. Like one of the kids does that. So like,
they mention
that's what I'm saying. It's full of that kind of stuff. Yeah.
they mention it, but they don't actually show it, because to make it sort of to scare one of the other kids. The kid is trying to scare the other kid. Right?
Actually, it's told to Nancy.
It's told to
Glenn
Nancy?
tells Nancy, what happened to one of the kids they had there before.
Okay, I got that.
Because he says we lost him to Fairview, which I'm assuming is like the next level mental facility.
Oh, yeah,
that's right.
Yeah,
right.
so
cool.
Yeah.
Let's just jump in. And
there's one last note I wanted to add real
Okay.
quick, a little bit of levity before we start actually going into the book and stuff.
Don't worry. There's enough levity. There's enough levity in this movie.
I was gonna say,
don't worry.
the actor who played Kincaid had such a terrible day trying to get to his audition. He got caught out in the rain, missed 2 of his buses, got in there, and as soon as he walked in, they said, "Okay, so now we want you to read this line." He said, "Fuck you. Russell said you're hired."
Well, and the other bit was Just a little lead up to that, though, is he didn't think he was right for the part because in the script,
true, yeah,
it was described as a large black man, buff football player type with a butch cut or whatever it was, and he looked at himself. He's like, I ain't nothing like that.
I'm not Bo Jackson.
I mean, Lawrence Fishburne, you can describe him more of like that, but not really. All right, cool.
Which is funny because that's probably what Lawrence did. Is he probably came in and auditioned for Kincaid, and they're like, "You're a little too old for Kincaid." But but the thing is Kincaid is one of the most famous. Yeah, but he's one of the most favorite characters, right? Everybody loves Kincaid. I mean,
who has the balls to call Freddy Krueger a pussy in Dreamland? I mean, come on,
he's gonna kick that motherfucker's ass all over Dreamland.
Yeah. Could you imagine a young Samuel L. Jackson in that role?
Basically, that's what he is. Like, great, now it's my dick that's killing me.
It's sort of the same kind of lines that you would get from Samuel L. Jackson, but that kid nailed it. Anyway, so we're gonna jump into this movie. Don't worry, we love it, Tom. We love talking about movies. We are enjoying.
Well, you had me on for basketball, and I'm like, yeah, I love Matt and Trey, but I'm more of a South Park person. When it comes to Nightmare on Elm Street, this is my jam.
Yeah.
I've
actually
interviewed a few people and stuff involved with it. So
that's cool. All right. So because this movie is very short, we're gonna make leaps and bounds while describing it. So the first kind of scene is Christian.
I was gonna say right before that, just so because I gotta go Tom about the music in this film, how they just are like, we got to put more Dokken in this.
Yeah. So
because originally Dream Warriors wasn't the ending track, right?
I think so, but they had different versions of it, and I don't think in Into the Fire was meant to be for the movie. That was just a throw in because on the video cassettes, which is funny, for years until the DVD came out, Dream Warriors is the only Dokken song in the movie. They took the other song and they just put in some generic rock music. Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
That was in the theatrical cut, yeah.
Yep. Go ahead. I said the Dokken notes is funny.
Thumbs up. That's good. That's great. Right. So we've got Kristen building a house that is literally Freddy's house. And she goes into her dream, goes crazy, yells, screams, and she meets. She actually builds the thing. Then her mother catches her. And her mother says, go to bed. Kristen goes to bed, has this dream about Freddy. She doesn't know what, where, and when, but she does go into the furnace, and she does wake up, goes to wash her face. And as she looks at the mirror, Freddy kind of appears, gets his first appearance, and then the faucet is literally grabbing her and trying to kill her. And she wakes up. She goes so ballistic, her mom brings her into this asylum, an actual asylum.
And just an aside, Tom, I know this, you probably know this, but for Dermef in the audience, this is a fun note. This is the first in the entire series of Nightmare on Elm Street films where they solely refer to him as Freddy. They never call him Fred Krueger.
There's one time where Nancy kind of reveals who this guy is. She said she is the only one that calls him Fred Krueger. All of them, all the other times, yes. This one time she calls him Fred Krueger, and then everybody just calls him Freddy.
I have to see what cut you watch.
Yeah. It's something that it came up when I was doing the short. Don't sweat it. It's a minute.
We'll see.
So I'm just saying.
I have to rewatch the movie again.
Her mother, when Kristen is waking up, her mother catches her with the razor blade as she cuts herself, and then she puts her in the asylum for kids who are trying to commit suicide. By the way, if you said Winona Ryder is up for this role, it's kind of weird because it actually a role that she actually gets in is it not Gone Girl? It's Girl Interrupted. Girl Interrupted. She goes into the asylum because she was trying to commit suicide.
That's a completely different kind of film, though. I mean, let's be fair.
Yes. but a good point though. I didn't know about the Winona Ryder thing.
Yeah.
So we also get introduced once we get to the asylum. We get introduced to all the basically all the staff. Where we've got we got Max, who's the orderly, Lawrence Fishburne.
Who's he's billed as Larry Fishburne.
Larry Fishburne. Yeah. By the way, and when we covered Boys in the Hood, it says Larry Fishburne, not Lawrence.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was Larry for a while, but yeah.
I think that
we've got
maybe after Pee-wee's Playhouse, he's like, yeah, I'm going to go with Lawrence now.
On Matrix, he's billed as Lawrence Fishburne. Mm-hmm. I always knew him as Lawrence Fishburne. I don't know. Anyway,
he started going by Lawrence when he started doing more serious stuff.
Yeah. We've got Dr. Sims and we've got Dr. I don't remember his name.
Glenn something. I can't remember.
Glenn, his last name, whatever. Introduced to them.
And Dr. Forrester, I think it is.
And we get introduced to Nancy. Nancy is coming back as I try to catch it again and again as some sort of a PhD student.
Or she's doing groundbreaking research in nightmares is what she's a grad student.
But
Tom,
so this is supposed to be like 7 or 8 years since the first film or whatever.
I would say, Tom, I'm sure that you're familiar with comics in some degree. Whenever I see her in this film, I could just think of as Rogue.
Rogue, yeah.
From the X-Men. There's a bit of that in her hair with the hair thing and all that.
Yeah.
But it's funny because she only said yes to this movie because she thought Wes Craven was going to direct.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Because Wes called her up and he's like, "Yeah, I'm writing the new Nightmare on Elm Street movie. Would you be in it?" He's like, "I'm not going to write you in it if you're not going to be in it." And she's like, "Yeah, of course." And she called him on her birthday, so she's like, "This is the greatest birthday present I ever could have got." Then, of course, she found out later that he wasn't directing. But yeah, so that didn't quite. She wasn't quite happy about that. And this movie was a nightmare to shoot, I guess. We didn't really get into that in the making of it, though. But
we can do it when we do when we summarize the entire movie. I'm just gonna jump in real quick. I'm gonna do the kids introduction before we do the first segment. Kind of get the introduction to all the inmates, we'll call them, all the kids who are there. Committed to the asylum. We've got the guy with the puppets that me and names don't remember the name of the kid. I think it's Joey.
That's Philip.
Philip.
Joey is the mute.
Joey's the mute, right? That's right.
You have Taryn, who's the punk. The
we got introduced
former junkie.
To Taryn. We got introduced to so the entire 5, 6, 7 minutes of when they introduce Nancy, you get to see all the different characters, all the different players of the movie. We got to see Joey and his motivation. He's chasing after the nurse. We've got the other orderly that I really don't remember the name of. He comes up later talking to Taryn that he wants to go and get high with her, and she kind of rebuffs him. He says that I'm done with that shit. I don't want this shit, which kind of sets up her dream and her death, basically. Mm-hmm. And then they introduce the guy in the wheelchair as well,
who's Will, and who also Tom, I don't know if you know, but the kids would actually play D&D on set with Will, because Will in his own private time was a renowned dungeon master at his high school.
Oh, nice!
So he loved Dungeons and Dragons. Kind of fit his character perfectly.
Well, and that's the thing, is a lot of these kids, if you'll notice, when kids are this young, and they're in their 20s, but they're still technically kids. You almost got to kind of cast to part anyway. A lot of these kids are pretty much who they are in the movie. I mean, granted, they don't have probably the issues they do, but some of them did later in life, and similar ones to the ones they had in the movie, which is weird. But
which is very, very weird. All right, I didn't mention it, and we're gonna do it now. A little segment called Missing Marquee. Out of all our guests, Tom is most definitely the quickest draw in the West. What is the Missing Marquee, what you ask? Missing Marquee is simple. We take 10 posters, have their text written off, we display them, and Tom will have to guess which movie this is as we do this and we do that.
There we go.
Let's go, Tom.
Annie Hall.
Annie Hall.
Cyborg.
Cyborg.
Oh crap! What's the name of this movie? I know the movie. It's the I can't
Anna
think of the name of it.
Is it?
Oh, Knock Knock.
Yes,
Is that what it's
knock
called? Something
knock.
like that?
Correct.
Yeah. I couldn't think of it. It's like, oh, this is shit. This isn't Paycheck.
This is Paycheck. Correct.
Is it Paycheck? Okay. Species.
Species.
Swordfish.
Swordfish.
Oh,
This
What
is
is this
a
one?
great movie.
Hmm.
Underrated. I've seen it not
I'm
on.
sure I know this Jackie Chan one.
It is Jackie Chan. It also stars Pierce Brosnan. I think it's set in Ireland, but I'm not sure.
I don't
think
know
it's set
this
in
one.
Ireland as well.
I'm gonna have to concede on
movie
this one.
is so good. It's very good.
Which one is this one? Is this the? Oh, this is the shit. I know the name. This one just come out not that long ago too, didn't it?
Maybe chat. Well, maybe chat will know. Maybe all my feelings.
Yeah, let the
will
chat
know.
get this one because I think I know what it is, but I can't think of the Tourist or something like that. It's called.
Very close to
hell's
the Tourist, but
Yeah,
not.
I
The
know. I'm
Tourist-
trying to think of it. Oh,
The Tourist is with the
Yeah.
Johnny Depp.
That's
I
Johnny
think.
Depp and Angelina
Yeah.
Jolie.
yeah, I know, but I'm trying to think of the title. It's
That's a
like
bad
that.
movie.
Oh,
It's
damn
very
it.
similar to the Tourist. Chat is also stomped. All right, let's continue. This is The Foreigner.
The Foreigner. That's it. Yes. Damn it. Of course,
It's
this is the
really
Grinch,
good.
and it's just called The Grinch. That's
The
War of the
Grinch.
Worlds.
Exactly.
That's Zoolander.
Zoolander, and that is done and
That's it?
dusted.
Wow.
Yeah, I got you with one of them. I got you
Two.
with one of them.
See, the same thing
I
happened
knew it,
with
but I
Nick
couldn't
last
think of the
week.
damn title. I knew it, but I'm like, God, I can't think of the title.
Yeah. To be fair, when I set this up, I was like, I know I try
got
to
some
guess
stumpers in
them
there.
without looking at the name of the file, and I was like, what is it? What is it? It went, oh yes,
To be fair, I gave you the clue there, buddy.
Hey, it's on you.
I'm just
On
messing
you,
with you.
baby. All right, cool. The one thing
All right.
that one thing that gets introduced while Nancy comes in, Dr. Forster, she does drop her pills, and it said some
What's
sort
new-
of something. I think it's
Hypnosil.
Hypnosil, and he looks at his computer and it's like, oh, it's something that cuts away your dream. So it's a dreamless sleep drug.
It's
Which-
dream suppressant, yeah.
A dream suppressant, yes.
Which we learn more about actually in Freddy versus Jason, which I like that they bring it
Yes,
back.
that was a good callback. And that's about one of
Because
the
it
only-
really gives you the motivation for Freddy in this part, because you kind of question yourself. You're like, why didn't Freddy just kill Joey? Well, there's a reason for that. There, you can kind of see more to it. He does not want these kids on this Hypnosil. Like,
Yep. He does not want them on this Hypnosil.
and they really, I love how they amp that up in Freddy versus Jason and how it ties back to this. It's really kind of interesting and cool, because it like shows that these kids not only have a defense by ganging up on him, but there's a drug that could possibly stop him as well.
Yeah. Again, one of
So-
the only good things in Freddy vs. Jason, to be fair. Whew, there's some bad
Well,
stuff.
I love
hate with
Freddy.
that one.
I love Freddy, but I hate these combination slasher movie. So I really haven't watched Alien versus Predator just because of that. Same goes with Freddy versus Jason. It's just not. It's like a sort of a popcorn movie to me, but it doesn't appeal me to go and actually watch it, because
Let me put it to you this way. I've read a lot of the other scripts. Like, the one we got is probably one of the best versions we're gonna get. Like, there's no other way to get these two characters together, really. And the other versions of the scripts were just so out there and outrageous. Like, in one version you had like one of the friends of the group, they resurrect Jason by putting their heart in Jason and stuff like that.
Yep.
And they can control. It's just weird shit.
I just wanted to show this picture because we talked about the snake and the goo, and kind of looks like a penis. If you haven't watched the movie, just look at this frame and see why the NPAA would maybe think about giving this a bad rating, and they've added all this shit and goo in it. And okay, that's
of all the things, I don't really know if this is one of the few of the films that I don't think the MPAA gave him a bunch of shit on comparatively, but yeah, that was probably one that I'm sure was questionable.
Well, I would say the only comparing it to the Halloweens and especially the Friday the 13th that were coming out at the time, this looked tame.
Well, that's the thing is Nightmare had going for it was it's all fantasy and happening in a dream, because they would have never been able to get away with some of the shit they get away with in Nightmare 3 otherwise.
True.
I guess.
True. Yeah.
The MPAA does not like running blood, and we have, I think, at least 2 instances of that in this movie.
Yes.
Yeah, when Kristen slashes her thing, when she wakes up in the dream, it's pouring down. And
if I remember right, they didn't like the needle scene, but I think the implications of the drugs being bad were the thing that they allowed it to go through.
Yeah.
But like that being another favorite death, but yeah.
Maybe that's why they made the whole
what would Nancy Reagan say? Nancy Reagan would be all for this kill. Drugs are bad.
Yeah. My God. I think
which
maybe
is funny because I think they referred to it as that too.
They did.
Maybe they make the holes kind of, be like a little mouth that wants to suckle on the
That's
whatever drug it was. Yeah, maybe that's why. I don't know. You said D&D, and I love this. This is the old like Dungeons and Dragons. It says Wizard Master.
Yeah,
just because they didn't have to deal with, was it TRS at the time?
Yes, but if you look at the background right there, there's clearly a Dungeons and Dragons primer.
Yes, it's the old Dungeons and Dragons. Yes.
What is even better is look up in that left-hand corner. He's got an old school Gremlins fucking birthday card.
Yes,
I had that as a kid, man. That is so cool.
The whole scene. To be fair, I sent this to All My Feelings, and after I saw the movie for the first time, I was like, this kind of reminds me of something. Watched it the second time, and immediately it clicked. Do you remember the old cartoon of Dungeons and Dragons, where they have this kind of carnival ride, and they fall into this Dungeons and Dragons kind of world, and the dungeon master is like, oh, Amazon, clerk, rogue, wizard. It's like, ooh, this is just like that with these kids. We have the wizard character, we have the rogue character, we have the big barbarian. We've got all those characters just like Dungeons and Dragons, and this is where it all ties in together in a nice, neat bow, which I love. So they set the Dungeons and Dragons thing, and then we have the first death scene with the puppet. And let me set this up.
A small aside. I did like the setup between the puppeteering in this is awesome, and some of the stop motion's good, except for the skeleton at the end in the
the skeleton at the end.
That looked like Jason and the Argonauts, kind of bad. But no, the setup between Will and Joey, say like, if I make any kind of sound, setting up sleeping shifts, where like, if I make even a whimper, wake me up. Like, they know, the kids already know what's going on, and they're already keyed into it, but no one will believe them. That's what I found that really great is. And most of the other ones, they're all just trying to understand, and it's only too late that they understand what's going on. And this one, they're all keyed in from the beginning. They all know this is the same thing that's coming after me. It's coming after you too. We know how to stop this by just waking ourselves up.
Well, they haven't quite connected yet that they're all dealing with the same problem. They all just feel like they're fucked up in some way, right?
That's fair.
Yeah, because like the way it's set up in the movie, especially like the way Sims treats it, it's almost like she hasn't quite put together that there's this correlation between the teens other than the suicide rate, because they're blaming it all on suicide, right? They don't correlate the dreams. The kids have figured out that there's something to do with falling asleep, but they haven't connected yet on the Freddy level, because that's when you have that scene with Nancy and she explains who Freddy is, and they finally realize what's going on. And that's a brilliant scene, because the best part is you don't have to have seen the first 2 films to know what's going on.
You can walk right
because
into this
he
and you're
does a
perfectly
great
fine. Yeah.
job.
Yeah, it kind of ties in because everything you need to know about Freddy. I mean, put the Amanda Kruger thing aside with basically Dr. Forster. As soon as you hear Nancy talk and says, "Well, he has a hat and a sweater and a glove, and he comes to you in your dreams," and everybody, all the group is like, "Whoa, this
Well, because
is
at first their attitude is like, "Oh, all you adults always say you know what the hell is a problem, but you don't, right? You
yeah."
just don't get it. You don't listen to us, and all that kind of shit."
And
Yeah.
comes Nancy, which they look at her as an adult because she's supposed to be what, 24 or 5 or something. So it's 6-7
Somewhere in
years,
that range. Yeah. Yeah.
and she was a
Because the first film
senior.
jumps 5 years to the second film, and then this is supposed to be
Yes.
like 2 years after that.
And when she ties that in, she's like, "Whoa, okay, that's where they kind of become some sort of a group that is."
It's the seed of the Dream Warriors.
Yes, it's the seed of the Dream War. So we have, like I said, this shot is great because you can see it from both ends. You can see it from the point of view of the nurse looking at the kid, and then his perspective, where you can see him with the attendants coming in and walking him out into that bell tower that he jumps off of.
Asshole.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what Kincaid says, Tom. It's like, Philip, we got having a stroll, asshole.
Asshole.
Let me see. I can't.
Well, they also because they tied in that he's a sleepwalker as well. So and that's another thing is how Freddy manipulates the kids and everything. It's just so great how he uses. This is the film where he really started tapping into their, because before we had the kind of basic teenagers. The first film we only had a couple of people die. The second film it was. Let's not even talk about that.
Yes,
this is the first time we really see Freddy. Basically, what Robert Englund describes as getting into their underwear drawer, right? He knows what's in their diary. He knows their deepest secrets. He knows their deepest fears. He knows their weaknesses, and he starts to use them against the kids. And this is the first time we really start to see that notion, right? A great example here, too. This kid wants to be an actress. So he literally kills her with a television, right? The poeticness of it is just, this is where we get Freddy being 100% Freddy that we love.
Yes.
And I think from what you said then too, I think Dick Cavett must have loved it when they had, Robert Englund coming as Freddy. What the fuck would you know?
Yeah. I did enjoy the scene where, again, it ties in together. Every kill has an element of what the kid is kind of thinking, either manifesting or kind of using the background to be the kill, like you said. And it just makes every single kill or every single interaction with Freddy mean just a little bit more than just, "Oh, I just killed this
he's making
random
it so
guy."
personal. Yeah.
Yes,
He's
it's
making
much
it
more
very personal.
Yes.
And I would say too, just as a small aside too, in that scene with Jennifer, like that's actually a little bit of a callback in her scene where she's sitting there watching TV. She grabs one of those cigarette butts, she lights it, and you're like, oh, this is the reason why she was asking for her cigarette privileges back. She's burning herself with the cigarettes in order to keep herself awake.
Yeah.
And right, from a doctor's point of view, you would just see that as, just disturbing behavior, nothing.
Yeah,
to
you're harming yourself. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah. The thing I showed this, the one thing was interesting because the makeup here is great. Why? Because he came out of the TV, kind of stretches the top of the TV, which is gray, and it kind of, if you look at him, it kind of has that gray throughout the Freddy mask as well as the antennas. For me, this is kind of makes it more interesting, along with the robotic arms and everything. It just makes it, at least for me, it was a fun kill. It's just a fun kill, right? For a movie that's supposed to scare you, I think because of this movie, I liked the next movie even more. That where you have a lot more elaborate kills and a lot more interesting kills on the fourth
because
one.
this film, really
Where in
established
this
the
film,
rules.
it kind of established it as everything.
Well, that was just it. This movie was such a huge hit, and they stumbled with part 2, and they've all admitted it that were involved with it. In fact, when I even talked to Robert Shea and Jack Shoulder, the director, and stuff like that, they at that time, like Jack said, there was no fucking rules. He's like, it was just Freddy's this guy who kills you in your dream. We were trying to come up with something different, and then they learned from their mistakes of that second film. And so the third film, they really kind of sat down and said, these are the rules. Freddy can do this. Freddy can't do that. The kids can do this and the kids can't do that. So that once they establish the boundaries, from there on out, everything's open, because the script they got first from Wes, and then even Chuck's script, like you were saying earlier, it went all over the place. Like, not only would they have needed $20 million to make, they probably would have needed $40 to $50 million to make the movie. Because they just, like in the original version from Wes, there was no rules at all. They said that like Freddy was everywhere doing all kinds of crazy shit. You really needed Chuck and Frank to come in and really ground it a little bit, which is kind of funny saying it because it's the most fantastical of all the films.
Yes.
But they really did need
Very
to kind of
much so.
ground it in some kind of reality, and that they did tone a lot of that down. And that's where they did sit down and go, okay, these are the rules. So from here on out, as we just pointed out, like with the elaborate kill, that also, this movie really fed into the franchise as far as giving Freddy more backstory without making him less frightening. It gave him a little bit more personality. And through that personality, it found a way to make him scary, because sure, he can crack wise. And I get a lot of people are like, oh, Freddy wasn't funny or scary after that. I disagree, because once you get past 3 into the 4 and 5 and so on, like we were just saying, each and every kill is more personal, right? Like, especially when you get to like the 4 and 5 kills that are in those films. 3, 4, and 5 have the most personal kills of all the movies. Like, I love the kills in part 5. I'm not a big fan of the film overall, but they have some of the best kills, right?
It has
Same thing
really
with
good
Freddy's
kills,
Dead. Yeah, it's got some really great kills in it, and that's the thing, is that they figured out their gimmick instead, because by the time you get to Friday the 13th, 6, 7, and 8, and all that kind of stuff, there's only 1 or 2 memorable kills, because Jason can only do so much, so many ways.
Yes.
Well, to be fair, Tom,
it opens up that world a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, to be fair, Tom, too, can anyone actually recall the differences between Friday the 13th Part 5, I would say Part 4 through 7?
I could, but offhand, like if you asked me certain deaths, there's only a few I could be able to like.
Because I could think of just actually showing a different scene from that isn't one, obviously, clearly with, I just forgot his name. The child actor who was an absolute monster. Corey Feldman. Without Corey in it, if you were to show another just a random death scene, it would be very difficult for me to tell you which film it was in until we get to Jason Goes to Manhattan. It's Jason Takes Manhattan.
I wouldn't have that problem, but I've seen them so many times. That's the only reason I'd have it. Like, I can tell which Jason it is just by the way Jason looks. So like that's, in certain actors and things of that sort. But like, I just saying, like, Jason only has like maybe a handful of kills that if you asked me a certain character how they died, I'd be able to tell you right now. There's only a handful of those when it comes to Friday the 13th. When it comes to Nightmare on Elm Street, I can tell you how each and every one of those kids died.
Yeah.
Like I would say I know all the characters, I know all their names. I mean, it was a little rusty coming into this, but I've seen this movie so many damn times that this is the one that as a kid we watched endlessly.
I would say the only one that was different than that in the Friday the 13th series, well, in 2 particular sets of circumstances, was Jason Goes to Hell and obviously Jason X, because those had 2 very different sets of very unique kills, but they were supposed to be over the top for the sake of being over the top. Jason Goes to Hell, he tears the man's jaw off and puts the one woman's face into the deep fryer.
It's from Jason Goes to Hell? Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then in Jason X, there's the cryogenic, the liquid nitrogen scene.
Okay.
Yeah. And then also Jason X, there's a callback to the Part 7 kill with the sleeping bag, which is a
bag.
favorite.
Yeah.
All right. I flashed it for a second. We Tom said the rules. So one of the frameworks is basically the Amanda storyline with Dr. Forrester, where you have the who Freddy is, where he comes from, where Dr. Forrester, it begins with him looking at Amanda Kruger's character at the assignment, and then she kind of disappears into the crowd. And it was just a little take. This is the second funeral, and she's there, and she actually talks to him. When he turns back, she disappears. But he does have a little bit of backstory about Freddy, or not everything. Yes.
Yeah, that's what he goes into the old
abandoned section that they closed off.
Well, and it's brilliant because Craven already made, like, his best description of Freddy was, what is the most vile creature on earth? A child, someone who would hurt a child, molest a child, and then on top of that, how do you make that worse? Well, you make him the bastard son of 1,000 maniacs from a nun who was assaulted.
Yes.
No less. Yeah. Right? So it's like, how do you make him even more vile of a creature than he already was? Because that was the thing, is like, what is Freddy? He goes, well, he's this thing that, on Earth, he would be the worst thing we could ever dream of. So what would the devil do? He would send back his greatest creation.
Yes.
to keep doing what he was doing to begin with. And this whole thing is like, he was born of not just sin, but just a horrible sin.
Oh, yes. So we get to the hypnosis scene where Dr. Forster tries to hypnotize everybody in the room. And at first it seemed like it didn't work. But then they realize, we're all in a dream. So Joey goes out.
Joey gets called away by the
by
sick nurse.
Yeah. But the rest of them actually kind of discover everything. It starts with the guy in the wheelchair, where he gets up and he says, in my dreams I can walk, but also I'm a wizard master. Yeah. And he does some of this magic. And Kincaid takes a chair, starts to bend it.
Did this.
Yeah, Christian does a lot of acrobatics. This is where the theme from Dungeons and Dragons, the cartoon, kind of popped in my head, and was like, oh, that's where it is. And we see
we get punk rock Taryn.
I'm trying to get that specific spot. I'm beautiful and bad. And I like bad Taryn. She looks cool. She looks just like the person I wanted to date when I was
she actually stabbed Robert Englund.
Really?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
wasn't it a prop knife?
No, she had real knives, and she wasn't supposed to get so close, but she's like, I was getting really into it, and I guess she accidentally caught him in the side.
Oh shit.
So, which I'm sure, for Robert, it's probably poetic justice, considering how many times he's probably nailed some of those kids with the knives.
He's nailed a lot of them by accident. This wasn't the first film he did either.
I think in one of those movies, or maybe it was all of them, that a lot of people said Robert Englund kind of acts weird, and we don't know if he's going method or he's actually connecting to an evil part of him that actually wants to kill kids. That's something I read a long time ago, around 2002, I think. Article about is he really a bad dude, or is it him being method and trying to keep everybody away to make sure he's not connecting to the other actors because he's trying to kill them and make it.
I think it's more method, because from what I've heard of Robert Englund, he's a huge teddy bear in real life.
Yes,
I've heard he's one of the most.
Yeah, that's when I read this article. It's like, in every other article that he had interviews, I've seen interviews, people interview him. He's a gentle, mild mannered guy, but it always sits in my mind. It's like, It's those quiet ones that maybe
Well, see,
behind
that's
the
odd
scenes.
because as I mentioned before, because this was noted when they did interviews and everything way back in the day. They were mentioning the fact that the kids were asking Robert how to ask Patricia Arquette out.
Yes, but I'm talking about like later films. I'm talking about later.
Well,
Oh,
It's an
well,
article
maybe
about
he
the
got
later films.
deeper into it. I mean,
I
because
think honestly, this is my opinion because I've heard enough interviews about it from Wes's angle, from his angle. Robert is one of those actors. He loves the craft.
yeah.
He's a big fucking kid when it comes to, oh, I get to be something.
Mhm.
Yeah,
For some reason, when they were testing older men and they were really close to casting David Warner in the part, they even have the makeup. It's out there. I've posted it on my Twitter before.
David Warner,
For some
who
reason,
just died.
yeah, he was almost Freddy Krueger at one point. He was the closest
Really?
person to the job, but the deal fell through because they couldn't get the money together. That's the only reason he didn't play the part. Because I think that he wanted I don't think it was $1 million, but at this time it would be similar to that, and they just didn't have it in the budget, obviously.
Yeah.
But so they were looking around, they were looking at older men because Wes always figured the character would be in his 50s, maybe somewhere like that. He goes,
Yeah.
the problem was every time we get these old men in here, they'd be either just too sweet and they couldn't get to that place, or they would just be afraid and they would pull back just before they would get to it. But Robert, when he came in, he just relished it. He jumped into the role, and to him, he treated it like it was, just he became Freddy.
So
And it was because he could just get into that deep,
method.
dark place. It is
Yeah,
a way because, and that's what Robert explains it as on the other end is he goes, obviously that's the farthest thing from me in my everyday life. But he goes, that's what I got to tap into. And he goes, when I'm sitting in the chair, he goes, that's when I get into character. He goes, because it's that 3 to 4 hour makeup session. And he goes, and he gets himself in this zone where it's almost like he's reminded with every piece that gets shellacked on that this is what the parents did to me and this is the children. And it's, he gets himself in that Freddy mode. So yeah, once he puts the makeup on and he's got the glove on, it just comes through him like he's, like that actor thing. And I know what he's talking about because there's certain characters that I've created too as a quasi actor myself where you just turn them on. Like there's something about them. You put yourself in that mindset and you speak through them or they speak through you, however you want to put it. And it's kind of what Freddy does with him is he just kind of takes over, and that's kind of where he really loves the New Nightmare story because he's like, that really spoke to him in a sense of how like Freddy was almost like this other entity besides him, like it really was, like a whole nother person, but yet it was him. It was weird.
All right, I flashed in the joy part where he's tongue tied into the bed and dragged into
there's a
Freddy
really
sanctuary.
important part about this. The actor who played Joey was tied up in that spread eagle position for so long. He also passed out.
Well, for those, you got to really kind of explain that. He's not laying on his back.
No.
It's shot on its side. That's what it is. So he's standing up like he's being crucified. Like yes.
Yeah.
So he ended up passing out at one point. Yeah.
So and the thing is, he's not dead. Freddy doesn't kill him.
I know, which is brilliant, right?
He's in a coma, and then the main kind of doctor of the place goes in and was like, what's the meaning of this? You're prescribing these medical medicine that is experimental, this Hypnosil thing, and you have no right. What am I going to tell the parents? I've heard from Dr. Sims that this is something that you're off doing on your own. This is not protocol. He bans Nancy and he tells Dr. Forrester, you are on thin ice with us. And that kind of prompts the rest of the movie where everything kind of shifts into gear. Where
actually, I think Glenn got fired at the same time there, if I remember right.
Neil got fired.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
What's funny too is I just have a question there for the head doctor that's coming in. How would they explain the fact that that Joey now has come and get him, bitch?
Yes.
Carved into his chest.
Yes. It's weird, but it happens.
Wasn't that a little bit later though too?
It's a little bit later. It's a little bit later.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's
not,
why probably.
it's not where he's there, but yeah, I get it. I get it.
It's still just
yeah,
like at some
like
point in time, like
that's where Freddy's so smart in this one, right? Like he knows he's powerful enough that he doesn't need Joey right now. But what he does need Joey for is to get
lure them in.
Glenn and
Yeah, to
first
grab
get
all the
Glenn and
kids.
Nancy fired because over the Hypnocell, because he doesn't want these kids taking the Hypnocell. And then also he's separating the kids so they're less powerful because he's more powerful than he's ever been. As he explains to Nancy, he's been retaining the souls of the children.
Yes.
And using them for strength. And this, of course, sets that whole thing up too, because we've never seen that element to it too. So this adds a lot. This is why this is a fan favorite film. This does what sequels should do. It takes the original characters, builds upon them, lets them progress, like with Nancy and her father. Then you get Freddy, who we get the rules finally told to us through the other characters and various means. But we also understand why he's so powerful and what he gets to do, what he does. And he's using the souls themselves, and you also have his mother who's appearing to Glenn to try and, fight for the souls of the children, because they are, as Nancy points out, the last of the Elm Street kids. So like, it kind of sets up this idea that Freddy's on this end game of a goal kind of thing. And as you guys pointed out, this was meant to be the last one.
Yeah.
There wasn't going to be anymore until this one became this huge fucking hit. And they're like, well, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, the new line just went, so how about number 4?
Yes. How about the money, Lebowski? Exactly. So we have, once he gets fired, he hears this call and he goes to this abandoned wing, gets in, and he meets Amanda Kruger, and she tells him about what happened and the son of 100 maniacs, a bastard son of 100 maniacs. And he kind of figures out, he doesn't figure it out. He figures out at the end where he looks at the grave that she's not alive. That she's not alive.
He just sees the Amanda
You see the Amanda Kruger thing, and he's
her the name that she was given when she joined the convent.
Exactly, and this is what happens where Nancy, she was banned, but she's actually still there for some reason.
She comes to visit,
and Freddy kind of taunts her into, okay, you want him? Come and get him, bitch.
Well, they actually show how she gets back in. Lawrence Fishburne lets her back in.
Yes. Yeah. She asks him to just come and just talk to the kids. And Max is like, I really can't do this. It's like, I just want to say goodbye. And then she weasels herself in. By the way, like Lawrence Fishburne's character, Max, lets off a lot of these. He's very lenient with the rules where he's supposed to be super strict.
Well, I think it's because he actually gives a shit about these kids, and the same thing can be said about Sims, right? Like, even though she's technically one of the antagonists in the film, they just mean well. They're just trying to do what's right by these kids.
Well, especially with Sims, especially to that point, Tom, to everyone. All of what they're talking about seems like everyone else is absolutely crazy. And it's like, yes, we have to help these children. Yes, I'm sorry, Neil, but you're fired. Nancy, you're banned. We can't have you around these children anymore.
Keep calling him Glenn and it's Neil. Thank you for reminding me. I don't know why I call him
Glenn. Is it not Dr. Forrester?
It's actually Neil Gordon.
Near Gordon? Oh, okay. Well, I'll call him Forrester.
I was totally wrong. I did it. I called him Forrester first. It's wrong.
That's fine. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
He's a tiny character.
Yeah, Glenn is Johnny Depp's character. I just woke up before the show, so I apologize, guys.
Don't worry about it, Tom. Don't worry about it. So we get a scene where Sims kind of sends Kristen to the secluded room. And that kind of sets everybody off because they know when somebody's in that room, it's a big problem because you're going to fall asleep and then Freddy's going to take you and you're dead. Meanwhile, Nancy and the good doctor, I'm calling it the good doctor, go and talk to the father because they found out that from Amanda that they need the bones to have the bones buried in a sacred ground. That's one of the things she discusses, that how to kill or how to get rid of Freddy forever. So all you need to do is find the bones that the parents burned and then hidden away instead of actually burying it into the ground. That's another kind of one of those framework things. And these are the rules, as Tom said before. This is how we get rid of Freddy. These are the rules. This is what we have to do. So we have to do this. So she goes to her father. She tries to convince him to know where the bones are. And he's like mad drunk and he dismisses her. Actually, he tells her to fuck off, basically. And the doctor is so goddamn annoyed. He goes back into the bar and he pulls him out of the chair. It's like, I don't care if you don't care about if Nancy dies or not, but I do. Setting up the whole relationship between the doctor and Nancy. And he gets to her father. He does get to, he makes her father take him to that place. But this is where they kind of split off. Nancy goes back into the asylum and he goes back into the bar and convinces the father.
Side note, another great character actor who, like, I can't remember his name, but I've seen him in so many things.
Is it John Saxon or Craig Saxon, the father? It's something Saxon.
John or John Saxon, yeah. It's one of those. But
great character actor.
It's
John
Saxon.
It's John Saxon.
Yeah, it's like you've seen him in so many things when you just see his face. It's like Joey Pants. You're just like, oh yeah, I know him.
So let's do the Nancy part because we do get a little bit of him and the doctor driving to the scrapyard. Meanwhile, Nancy,
they go to the church first, where he steals the holy water and takes the crucifix. The priest stops him, and he's just like, "Well, here's my driver's license. I'll bring this right back."
Yeah, yeah. It's
sure it works that way, but okay.
It doesn't, but it is in this movie.
And also just the junkyard scene itself. I mean, this should be.
This familiar. Is just before the junkyard. It literally goes back and forth every time you need to have some sort of progression. It goes back and forth between what's happening in the dream, in the fight, and the fight outside. And it starts right here. But before we do this, we're gonna stop and do our second segment of the night. It is called Screen Fighter.
Round 1, fight.
What is Screen Fighter for the uninitiated? Is we take two movies, pit them together, and see which one is the best one. If there's no discernible difference between the two, both of them are good, both of them are bad. We fall into our criteria, which is Friday evening, Saturday evening, out with the boys, out with the girls, out with your significant other. We've got two movies in a vacuum. Which one will we pop in? And F11, bablam. All right, cool. Boondock Saints or The Matrix? Chat participation is most welcome. I know there's a little bit of a lag. Go ahead and cast your vote. Tom?
Believe it or not, I've never seen Boondock Saints all the way through. I do own it, but I've only seen it in bits and pieces. So I'll have to go with The Matrix on this one for all of them.
Okay.
Although I know Boondock does have a big cult following.
It's yes, and we have a very good friend of the show, one of our the only mod who's not here today, who loves this movie. It's like his number one of all time movie.
I was gonna say, as much as I love Willem Dafoe in the Boondock Saints, Saf is gonna be so fucking mad at me, but I have to go with The Matrix.
I don't care. It is literally The Matrix. It is so good. Rewatchable, even if you know everything that's going on, it's worth it. I watched it with my kids and they got it. They actually got it. They're a bit young.
They should have just stopped.
Yes.
Right there.
Right there. We've got the Ozzy Hossy going for Boondock Saints. It has a cult following, dude. It has a cult following.
I know. Yeah, it does. And it's not a bad film, but just comparing the two.
It's not. The thing is, I still have to do my 1999 Is This the Best Year in Movies stream. I'm still working on it.
Oh, okay.
But it's coming. So it's The Matrix. Next,
I
Ferris
don't know. 84 was
Bueller's
a good
Day
year.
Off or Wall-E.
It's funny, Tom, because he did 84 first.
Yeah.
I did podcast about 84. Yeah.
I already did a full stream on 84, going from bottom to top on the top grossing worldwide, and went through, stopped at all the points along the way of movies that people never seen before, and I've seen, well, not lots of times, but many times, and it's crazy how great 1984 was. To me, it is the best year in movies ever. I'm just working on the 1999 one. It's very
82
long.
is pretty damn good too. And 99 had some good stuff, but it was kind of like 99 and 98 were also kind of the beginning of the modern era as well. But
yes.
Anyway, as far as Ferris Bueller and Wall-E is probably the better film, but Ferris Bueller is the one you watch with friends and stuff. Wall-E's not something you're gonna kick it with your buddies and you know. Ferris though is the more classic of the two, I guess, at this point, but Wall-E is still modern. So boy, this is a tough one because they're so incomparable.
Yes. This is exactly why this segment exists. To match in the two great ones is hard. It's really hard to pick. Just pick one.
Yeah.
Guys in the chat, just pick. Don't worry about it.
I'm gonna have to go with Wall-E, sadly, on this one.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Ferris.
Don't be sorry. Never be sorry. Feelings?
Because Wall-E is arguably one of Pixar's best.
That I agree with, but I'm gonna have to go with Ferris Bueller's. I mean,
I know.
We reviewed it like what, 4 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
See, now my comparison for that is Ferris is one of John Hughes' lesser. I mean, it's probably one of his more well known, but to me, like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles and some of his other stuff is so much better.
I think, definitely Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is definitely a better film, but as a love letter to Chicago, it's Ferris Bueller.
Oh yeah.
If you would have asked me 2 weeks ago this very question, I would have said Wall-E, even though it's not my favorite Pixar movie. I didn't like Ferris Bueller's Day Off for a very long time. Reviewing it, watching it again, it's Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Interesting.
Yep.
But I can see it. Oh, you guys, this one's a tough one for me. Okay, you've got Gremlins 3 versus one of the greatest biopics of all time. This is not fair.
Yeah.
Gremlins 3?
Have you ever seen
what Joe Dante said it was? Yeah.
I mean, like, it basically is.
Okay. I've seen it, but I never saw it that particular. I need to rewatch it again. All right, Big Soldiers or Man on the Moon?
Man on the Moon all the way, although I love Small Soldiers.
Another
Man on the Moon,
1999 movie.
Yeah, is a movie that I have argued so many times over is probably the best biopic of all time, and Jim Carrey got robbed of an Oscar nomination.
Yes, he did.
Robbed. Feelings?
Of course, Man on the Moon. We've discussed this movie to death before.
Yes, it's Man on the Moon. It has to be. Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest.
Oh, this is easy.
2 versus Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Easy.
Close Encounters of the Third Kind is a seminal film. Like, I mean, I've seen it so many times. And the second Pirates movie is one of the worst, in my opinion. I know a lot of people love it, but it's one that I can't get through. It's where I kind of realized that, this gimmick is not going to last long. But it did a lot longer than I thought it would. But Close Encounters for me is just a classic, hands down.
Close Encounters has a lot. It's very long. It's longer than you think. The thing for me is it has a lot of tiny little bits that are so iconic. The mashed potato mountain, where he builds a mountain out of mashed potatoes, and he goes to his wife and says, "This means something." And the way you communicate with the notes, the different notes, and that kind of builds up from the start of the movie with the French dude and his American counterpart, and then they bring it to that that site. They have the whole elaborate kind of way to get rid of people.
Okay,
where
enough.
they
You're making me want to watch it already. No, I'm just kidding.
Dude, it's so good. I will put it up there
They
with
belong here more than me.
Spielberg's best movies of all time. Feelings? I'm guessing you have nothing to say.
I was going to say,
I agree,
also with Close Encounters, because I know, Tom, how much you like South Park too. Just remember when the internet goes out and they all just worship their router?
Yes.
Like that?
They're chasing the internet. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just like, oh God, it's such a good callback to Close Encounters. So good.
All right.
This is easy for
close
me
in.
too, although I got to explain why.
No worries, man. This is the last pairing, so go ahead.
Old school, because by the time I saw Something About Mary, everybody had talked it up so much that I, at that point, thought it was one of the worst movies I ever saw. I'm like, this is not what I thought it was. I mean, I knew this is what I kind of was. It just, I didn't see the appeal. It took me a couple extra viewings after that to kind of get it. And then I'm just like, yeah, I could seeing this the first time. If you've never seen Dumb and Dumber and Kingpin, how you could think this is some groundbreaking comedy. But I'm like, yeah, I've been here before. This is nothing great. Old School, on the other hand, is the movie that made me fall in love with Will Ferrell. You did not like him before that. I hate that cast of Saturday Night Live. They took away my favorite cast. You had 2 members of that cast pass away. So for me, that to me was like the last cast for the longest time.
Yeah.
And then Old School came along and Will Ferrell won me over. He, between this and a few of his other smaller roles, and just the idea of this movie.
Streaking!
Yes. We're going streaking through the gymnasium.
I'll be the counterpart. There's Something About Mary. Watched it when it was live. Didn't know anything about the movie. Didn't know anything about the gel and the hair thing. It's Farrelly Brothers. To me, it's fantastic. It is Ben Stiller in a Ben Stiller movie that he hasn't been a director of or written it, to be honest. And everything kind of fit with everything in this. There are some kind of lulls in this movie. Watched it about last time, I think about 2 or 3 years ago. There are some lulls in it, but the highs are really high for me in this movie. I love Old School. It's really good. There's Something About Mary.
I see what you did there.
I was going to say, Tom, to your point, Kingpin, what a great callback in order to understand why there's Something About Mary just wasn't really that groundbreaking, even for me. And I saw it in theaters when it came out. That was okay. Old School has a special place in my heart because I was a freshman in college when the film came out.
Oh,
and a lot of my friends were joining fraternities at the time. So it was just like we all bonded over this film. And also to the point about Will Ferrell, too, this was sort of the beginning of that just glut of comedies in the mid-2000s. This was kind of the first wave of them coming in. Then we had, you had Wedding Crashers, you had Starsky and Hutch, you had Dodgeball, you had just movie after movie after movie.
Talladega Nights, Step Brothers, that's old Will Ferrell stuff. Yep. So you're going with all. Yes.
Superbad, yeah.
All right, cool. Well, not.
Ooh.
No.
Yeah, I don't think that's a fair fight at all.
That's not a fair fight at all.
Poor role models never had a chance, which is sad because that's actually a fairly clever comedy. Speaking of,
yes, it is. Yeah,
with Paul Rudd and I can't remember who else was in it, but yeah,
Sean William Scott, aka
Scott,
yes, which is funny because
Ed Helms.
Yeah, I see. My thing is like I understand Old School for you, my feelings, because American Pie came out the year I graduated.
I think we discussed this.
That
actually
was
baseball,
yeah, that was my movie for that. Yeah, so like I understand where you're coming from with Old School.
Yeah. Same goes with Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Like it's Chicago. It's
for me. Yeah, it's Chicago.
You grew up in there, so
and he had a Rottweiler. I mean, come on.
Cool. Right. Let's continue. So we're getting into the last bit, the final act, where they go into the dream, and the the first thing Nancy not the first thing, but what Nancy tells them just before they start the hypnosis thing is, we have to stick together, otherwise he will pick us off. And they go into the dream and they're all separated. Which means,
and again, that's Freddy being intelligent, being a methodical predator, you know.
So they go into Kristen's room because they established the fact that she has a talent of bringing people together, and they go into her room and then they get separated into the very bits because Freddy's clawing through everything. So the first kind of person who we get to watch the dream of is Christian, where Christian is actually set back into the start of the movie, where she wakes up from her dream and she sits down in her she's laying down in her bed, and her mom comes in and says, "I've got to entertain this person," and actually it's Freddy. He's like, "Where's the bourbon, bitch?"
No, he says, "Where's the fucking bourbon?" And then he grabs the headless, just the head of the mother, and the mother is just chastising Crystal.
Yes.
Man, Freddy, again, as you said, Tom, he's going into their psyche.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Because she's not living up to her mother's expectations, and all that kind of business. And yeah, it's just a great scene. And again, it shows you a few things, right? And it does it all in a matter of a few minutes. You see that, that Freddy cannot take these kids on all at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. He has a limitation to his powers. So he has to spread them out. And then he even points that out when he says, "I wish there was more of me to spread around." Like, that's kind of what he's referring to. Because as he gets them going, he's got them, he hits on every one of them individually. But then when they all get together and what's left of them in the cavern, then he talks to them all, then. And she's like, she notices how powerful he is. But we know that he's only got so far he can go with his strength. So he can't take them all on at the same time. We learn pretty quickly. And that's where they learn that they got to band together and fight against him and use their dream powers against him, because they do have the same effect on him that his effect, has on them. So they use that to their advantage, which does really set up, especially part 4 with the Dream Master, which I think is great.
The Dream Masters. And then we get Taryn facing off against, it starts off with this alley and this homeless dude, and she calls him out. He appears. They have that sort of glove knives against the two switchblades. This is where you said she kind of cuts him at some point. And
she really nailed him, I guess, in actuality. Yeah. She didn't mean to, of course. But
he kind of disarms her as soon as he pulls up the drugs or supposed drugs. She immediately goes back in terms of her character. Instead of being this badass character, she reverts back to being this scared Taryn who's afraid of taking just one more drug because she knows where it leads. And when he talks to her, it actually cuts to her, her elbows or her veins, trying to suck on these syringes. And he's like, "Anybody want to get high?"
Well, what they were her former track marks that she had.
Yeah, her former track marks from being an addict. And where he sticks her, he doesn't stick her in the belly. He sticks her right in the track marks. And that's how he kills her. And immediately it jumps to the guy in the wheelchair, where the Wizard Master. And the Wizard Master.
It's just when they show, by the way, Robert Englund's line, like saying, "You might be fine in here, but when you get out, you are back in the saddle again."
Yeah, and he shows him.
And the wheelchair from here, it looks like it's part of a Dark Souls boss.
Literally what I thought about is a contraption from Slanesh.
That's fair.
Like it's pain and death all in one chair.
Pain and pleasure. Yep.
Well, and this is another one of those things where, like, the Taryn one, it's funny you said that it jumps right to this death. Her head was meant to explode, but the effect didn't work, right? So they didn't have that. And then this chair was so damn big, they didn't realize it was too big to get down the hallway.
There's a point where it gets stuck and moves aside. That was actually a problem. Oh, I think we lost Tom for a second.
Yep.
Yeah, they didn't quite think it through, I guess, and they didn't measure it correctly or whatever it was that they were doing. And
let's say, and Tom's point too is, I did say with Taryn's death, because you can actually see the veins in her cheek start to expand, and then it just cuts to white, and then it goes right to Will.
Well, and remember I said Kevin Yeager has some video out there of behind the scenes. I believe there's the video of her head exploding, and you can see why it just didn't work. Because like only half of it kept exploding, and it was just like not working right. So, but yeah.
And when we said about when it's like personalized kills, the Wizard Master, I don't remember the name of the boy. Anyway, Will. He says the line that the guy who builds puppets when we're playing the D&D, that's the line that he said when he was casting a spell. So he was using that to cast that spell, and it kind of hurts Freddy, and it seems like it's working, where he uses the spell and he gets close to Freddy, and Freddy's like, he grabs the boy.
I don't believe in fairy tales.
I don't believe in fairy tales. It's like, yes.
And what's funny is this was set up. This is kind of a setup, and I do believe it's actually in Dream Master with the kid with the video games, Tom. How he's able to hurt Freddy.
Yes,
at least partially.
He hurts him, but he doesn't hurt him.
Yeah,
it kind of looks like he's winning, and then he dies.
Oh, that's Freddy's dad. Yeah.
Oh, it's Freddy's dad. Okay. I couldn't remember which one that was.
Also, in part 4, they do utilize, like, Alice figures out that she can use things like the Dream Warriors do, which is, again, something sadly they didn't really start to tap into ever again in this franchise, and I wish they had, but even here it doesn't get used to its full potential. Because, like, as you said, Freddy is hurt at first, but then once he gets his hands on Will, and shakes Will's confidence, that's when I think he's able to take him out. So that's they do a great job of kind of giving you the rules without flat out explaining it to you. It's kind of very well done. And that's down to, of course, Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont, hands down. So, yeah.
So we got Nancy and Kincaid kind of managing to traverse through this old, basically Freddy's house or Nancy's old house, and getting to find the room that takes you below, basically to the furnace, where it's the deep, dark, dingy place where Freddy lives, and they're going for Joey. Meanwhile,
Neil and Nancy's dad,
yeah, and Nancy's dad kind of get into the junkyard, and Nancy's
bury
dad,
the fucking thing.
Yeah,
and actually, this is they utilized this same. This might look familiar because this was actually used, the exact same set and junkyard was used in Dream Master in Part 4.
I'm not surprised considering. Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know that, but okay. He's like, okay, where did you put it? And the dad is like, no, I don't want to tell you. He's like, you came in so far, you can't even tell him where you put the bones. He gets, I guess, convinced. He gets convinced. He's like, you bury him. You need to bury him, not me, because you guys did this and you guys left this here. You need to do this. And then jumping straight into trying to save Joey. Let me see. Yeah, we'll do this. So he drops Joey as Nancy kind of slids down this this big pipe. She grabs him at the very last minute. Can't keep a hold of him, and Kincaid kind of swoops in, and because he's strong, he pulls both of them out. And once he pulls both of them out, in comes Freddy grabbing him. Nancy pull this big crowbar and jabs Freddy into this. Of course, he's very powerful, pulls it out, and then he shows Nancy the souls of the kids. And that's where he tells her, the souls are the ones that give me strength. The souls are what's keeping me alive.
And again, Tom, to what you were referring to before, how they're building on Freddy's whole narrative, and the reason why previous methods how to put him down before are no longer working. I think that was a brilliant idea by Darabont and Russell to actually utilize the term of like, no, it's the souls that are making him stronger. So the more that he kills, the stronger he becomes.
Yeah. And that may have even come from Craven's version. I can't remember now. I'd have to go back and look. But yeah, either way, like, yeah, it's just it shows that also not only that the ones that he's killing aren't getting to heaven or hell like they're supposed to either, right? Like he's kind of a stopgap between it. And it really adds a lot more to the character and the motivation of Freddy and what he's up to. And, later on, it also gives, areas for him to be more stronger or not as strong, like in Freddy's versus Jason. That's kind of the whole thing is he doesn't have his powers anymore. And because they kind of jump off of Freddy's Dead where they figured out the only way to stop Freddy is to not feed him, basically, kind of thing. And so like it really kind of sticks with the like this whole it builds a lore is what I'm trying to say. Sorry. I do love this Jason and the Argonaut scene. I know you guys don't, but it is very nasty looking now. But
it just looks very janky. Let's just say that. It looks so janky.
I think it's done with old school rear projection stuff with the stop motion. So I think that's part of the reason why it looks as bad as it does. And even if they were to do a 4K version now, I'm not sure this would look that much better because of how it was processed to begin with. But to me, there's just a charm to it. I don't know. It's one of the only times in the movie where the fourth wall is kind of broken in a way as far as in the real world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, that's not true because Neil's talking to Amanda the whole time too. So I suppose not. I mean, really, I guess it isn't. But it just to me, it was always fun as a kid when I saw this scene. It was just a standout scene.
The thing with this is you get to a point where Freddy basically got all the four. I think it's 4 people left, 4 kids left, or 3 kids and Nancy, and it looks like she just tried to kill him with that big crowbar, and it didn't work because he's so strong because of all the souls of the kids. And meanwhile, the dad and the doctor are in the process of burying those bones. And he's like, oh shit, this is happening. And he jumps into the real world using his skeleton to fend them off because the kids and Nancy are going to be there once he comes back. Right. He's not expecting
they're still asleep. That's the whole thing.
They're disturbing his mortal remains. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So no, go
ahead. And then
I just say that's what stirred him up.
And then we have the scene where they're trying to run away. He defeats the dad and the doctor.
Well, no, he kills.
Donald
Thompson. Like he pales him on something, which I found odd because do his powers technically manifest in the real world then? Because how would he have the strength in order to push? I mean, as a skeleton without any kind of musculature, I mean, it'd be just like being hit with a bone.
This is one of those points where I was saying where like the wall is broken a little bit.
Yeah,
but you can kind of give it a pass because they're messing with his mortal remains. It obviously stirs him out of the dream. Because I didn't think that was something that Freddy chose to do. It felt like that was like, oh shit, something's happening. Like it kind of looked on Freddy's face. So then he's kind of just thrusted into this. So yeah, it's a supernatural thing in the real world kind of thing. So just kind of take it like that. It is what it is. But
in terms of script wise, it helps maintain the suspense of, oh, he's about to be, buried. Amanda Kruger said he needs to be buried on sacred ground. They're just about to bury him. That's where he kills one. He incapacitates the other one where, okay, now he can't be buried. There's nobody to bury him. Right. And he goes back into the dream where we have that sequence with the mirrors where Joey's actual strength or his ability manifests itself where outside of the dream, they've established the fact that he's so scared and he's so distraught and so frightened. He can't even speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the dream, his power is using his voice as to free everybody else. I love the scene where he yells, he breaks all the mirrors, and that kind of brings everybody back into that room. I love the way that action shot is made.
That mirror room is an amazing set piece, and considering like how my feelings was saying how it was just barely put together at the last minute with like they didn't know how the hell they were going to do it. Like, but they managed to figure it out through various means of optical effects and stuff like that. But yeah,
if you look at this shot, it looks very liquid. The entire, the mirror itself, it looks very liquid. I was like, how? I know there's no CGI.
Yeah,
I know there's no CGI, but it looks, for the time, it looks really good. And when he frees them, everything's broken and they fall off the mirrors. It's great. It's a great set piece. It's a really great set piece.
And this is what I was talking about. Like this scene was the one earlier where I just rewound it a couple times just because I was trying to figure out how they did it. Because it was one of the few they've talked about it, but they never quite explained. Because I'm like, there's certain shots that's just like, I don't know how the hell they could do that in camera. Well, then I realized it's through a lot of the reflections that they use it, that your eyes are tricking you and you think you're seeing certain things, but the three of them are basically being shot out of these holes in the wall, but you're seeing their reflections on the other side. So you think they're coming from it's just amazing how the effect just works brilliantly. Cause it almost looks like Nancy or whatever is coming right out of
it looks like everybody's
mirror.
Yeah. It looks like
the mirror that doesn't have a back to it. Yeah, but you realize it, and I rewound it, and that's how I figured it out. She's coming out of a hole up above, but the reflection makes it look like she's coming out of the one mirror, and that's why it still has a back to it. And you're just like, it's just like amazing how they managed to work.
There's so much broken glass. It's like, how these stunt people not getting completely destroyed by this sugar glass? Where it's
I'm sure, I don't even know if it was sugar glass. Yeah,
it's still kind of sharp. You can catch yourself from the sugar glass, but it looks so good. So the thing is, the dad is dead in the real life. So what they do in the dream where they get to free themselves and they go into this room, he tricks Nancy to think, oh, the dad is okay. He talks about going to heaven and he's finally free. And as he's trying to,
the music even tricks you, right? Like,
yes.
Yeah.
The music, it kind of, as she goes into her father, we as an audience kind of relate to that. So, oh, he died. It's her final moments talking to her dad as he goes up to heaven, and bam, switcheroo.
Well, and again, it also talks about how Freddy gets into his, people's psyche, right? Like that's the one thing she never really got was, the love of her father. And then even though he's passed on now, the last thing he wants to do is see her. Oh, how sweet. No, it's just Freddy. He's fucking Nancy. One last shot.
And the shot inside the stomach. And the thing is, she still manages to, after she goes down, she still manages to have that one last hurrah to jump on Freddy to prevent him from actually killing Christine. As you see the doctor kind of hobbles out of the grave, getting the water, spilling it, doing the Spiritu Santi thing, and then using the cross to just
the final rites,
the final rites, and getting Freddy to there's a great shot hold that where he springs the water inside the dream. Freddy's like getting,
I love this. This is amazing.
Torn to pieces. I love
this. Is just done with classic optical animation, which is brilliant. Like, it just works so well.
And he, as the more spritzes of holy water, the more holes you see on his body, and then the final rites, and he's just gone.
He holds up the crucifix and the cross. This burns.
That is like one of my favorite shots.
Yeah. And Nancy dies.
Yeah.
So we get to see the final bit of the movie is where you get to see all the remaining kids and the doctor kind of having that funeral. The doctor kind of swings and looks at the back, and he sees that figurehead, the nun.
Sister Mary Helen.
Sister Mary Helena.
Yeah.
he goes to where she is and he finds the grave of Amanda. He talks with her just to. No, he doesn't. He tries to look after her. He gets to the grave and there. And he's like, oh, she died as she was either giving birth or a year later. I think she even mentions it that she died giving birth. No.
Oh, no, actually it's a couple of years later because he was born in the 50s.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And right. she committed suicide, actually.
Yes.
Is what they say originally. But when we find her in part 5, she's just dead in the tomb. She must have died praying for
her son soul, or whatever. Or her son's soul.
Her soul.
Yeah.
And then we do have one final shot.
Yes.
Dr. Neil sleeping peacefully, and there's it was a Malaysian dream doll that Nancy had that somehow was gifted to him. I guess, or maybe he bought his own. And there was the paper mache dollhouse that Kristen built, and a light turns on, and
yes,
we get that soundtrack, man.
Yep. Yes, and we get that soundtrack.
Bum, 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 bum.
And that kind of ends the movie, and it tells us, oh shit, this
Freddy's
may not
dead.
be the end. Even though they did try to tie everything up, like if
Ed does a pretty good job, yeah.
And
it could have ended the series. Had this not been a success, that there wouldn't have been a part 4. I mean, had it not been that, again, this gigantic box office, just absolute blockbuster, there would have been no way there would have been a part 4.
Yeah. So,
but that's my only real complaint. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was saying, let's summarize the movie. Go ahead, Tom.
I say my only real complaint is just how that end just kind of really whips you to the end point. It almost feels like it needs another 5 minutes to decompress a little bit, because you get so much happens in that last 20 minutes, and you're just like, oh wow, that's it. We kind of wrap that up quick,
Yeah. It goes from kill to kill to kill to action point. Again, outside of the dream, inside of the dream. Like, a lot is happening that last 20, 25 minutes where we talked about it last week when we discussed Child's Play, where the first 45 minutes to 50 minutes was a bit of a slog and
a lot of build up,
kills, a lot of build up, and then it just goes into ramp up where we're looking for this doll. And here it's even bigger, because you have that 1 or 2 kills of the mannequin guy and the girl from the TV, basically one after the other, but very methodical build. You get exposition dumps, you get a little bit of information, and then when it's go time, when Christian gets
paced perfectly, that room, right?
It's just go.
Yeah. Well, first you get Christian's dream, right, which kicks off the movie with a bang, and then you get exposition for a bit, but then you get Philip's death, which is a huge, great set piece, because that's really sucked you in, because you're like, oh my god, these kids have no defense whatsoever. And then then you build up to Jennifer's death, which then really kind of kicks in motion this idea of we need to band together, which then sets up the third act, which of course you got Joey's incident in between there and all that kind of stuff. So they do a really good job of following like the rules of we need this kind of set piece every so many minutes. And it goes to show how Chuck Russell knows how to put together a movie. And for those who don't know, Chuck Russell's other big films are the Blob remake and The Mask, more famously, with Jim Carrey, speaking of Jim Carrey earlier. And it really shows, I think, in The Mask, where his imagination, and I think his ability to take such a dark script that was the original Nightmare and kind of craft it into this fun, which really was kind of the MTV Freddy in a way. It was even though they didn't have any money to spend on it, it looks like it cost $30 million to make at the time and all this kind of stuff. And he had the soundtrack with Docking on MTV every 5 minutes. It was the first video cassette to ever have the music video on the cassette.
I believe it was also one of the first music videos that actually starred the star of the film.
It could be like, I know they brought that up
in it.
I'm not 100% sure on that because I think the year before there was a few because Who's Johnny has like most of the cast of Short Circuit in it. So I don't think that's
true, yeah.
100% accurate, but I think they are true. It is true that that was the first video cassette to ever come out with the music video after the film.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is funny that they didn't want to pay him for the other song on the video, but yeah. All the money went towards that.
Fire, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't want to pay for Into the Fire though, but yeah, so no, and it's just this is the one that kind of set the franchise up to be a franchise, and because at that point in history, sequels were not what sequels are today, and we brought I think we brought this up maybe in other kind of
in a backwards way,
before. But because at this point, the only movie that I can think of that ever made more money than the first one was Karate Kid 2 in this era, which was an anomaly. Even like the Friday the 13th movies, they all had they went down.
Diminishing returns.
Diminishing returns, yeah. And on the other side of that, like Warner Brothers did the same thing with the Police Academy movies and drove those into the ground by having one just about every year. But the reason they did those was the same reason you do these kind of movies usually is because they're cheap. But Nightmare on Elm Streets weren't cheap. That was the problem. And that's kind of what we were talking about earlier, is they weren't like your Halloweens or your Friday the 13th that they usually get lumped into. I would actually compare it more to Child's Play, like you were just saying.
Yeah, because they have that
fantasy
dream,
element.
the dream element where you had to like have houses doing stuff, and it's a lot of elaborate sets that you have to put in, and you use them for, I don't know, maybe a minute and a half throughout the movie. And you kind of have to jump into another set because it's a different dream. It's a different set. Even the furnace, if you look at the furnace in this movie, it appears about 3, maybe 4 times, and every single time it's in a different place. One time it's in the old in Kristen's house or in Freddy's house, and one time it's in where the hell is, where Joey is, and there's another one where there's a dream in the middle where she is in that house, but the furnace is a different place. So you got the same furnace, but around it, it's 3 different sets.
I would say another series that's kind of like that, Tom, to your point, was actually the Puppet Master series and Hellraiser.
Kind of, but they found more of a home on video. But Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was the only other sequel other than Karate Kid 2 in that era to make more money than the first 2 films.
Fanciful elements.
Oh yeah, fantasy element. Yeah. Fantasy element wise, yeah. Because like Nightmare on Elm Street crosses over genres. It's not, even though it follows a lot of the same typical slasher film rules, and Freddy is a perfect slasher film villain. The Freddy franchise is something that crosses over with the fantasy franchises big time. I've noticed, especially more in recent years. And I even told a funny story about Freddy the other night when we brought this stream up, about how I found out my mother actually kind of likes him more than she wants to admit too, because, and I think it's that fantasy element to it. Well, when I first started watching horror movies, I was a little younger, so she tried to monitor a lot of them, and a lot of them I noticed she didn't really show any interest in, or I could tell she was really kind of disgusted with, or she could just basically see, though, even though they're bad, but they're not that bad as people like kind of, because like when she first would talk about them, she would talk about them like Siskel and Ebert did, and if anything, that's one of the few bad takes in my life I think they had, is they just didn't quite understand. And I think if somebody would have sat them down and compared them in ways to the classic Universal films, then maybe Siskel and Ebert could have understood this thing. But for some reason, and you got to remember the era they grew up in. They grew up in that civil rights feminist era, to where
in the 60s era.
So they kind of, and I can see where they're coming from on certain aspects of it, the exploitation wise, but I believe in this movie is a great example of what I don't think they were paying attention to. And that was that the empowerment that these movies do give women. Because look at how we talked in the last 2 hours. I was just gonna say about very positive female characters in a film, and not once did we say, oh, they're Mary Sue's, or they're this or that or the other. But go ahead. I'm sorry, Mephisto.
I was just, when you mentioned that, it's so weird because that era is where the first kind of signs of Dungeons and Dragons kind of began, where you have the flower generation kind of coming up with taking Tolkien and bringing more like elaborating on the fantasy and coming up with Dungeons and Dragons, which is
well, you even have Lawrence Fishburne making the joke that all these parents dropped acid in the 60s. That's why these kids are fucked up.
Yep.
Yes, exactly.
Which I think is a huge element to this story too, that people overlook, that they've kind of also like, because that was where this era of kids were kind of, and I come from that era of kids where, you know, they were like, are they fucked up because of all the stupid shit we did in the 60s? Like a lot of parents were asking.
It's Generation X. It's the generation that came after the power and all that stuff. The kids that their parents dropped the acid, and now we're living like with this world that they gave us. All right, cool.
Yeah.
For me, actually a great jump in back to the franchise. Watched this and throughout the week I kind of went back. It's like I really want to go back into the origins. Watch number 1 and number 2 same day, and number 3 the next day, and I was like, oh, that's a cool little way of developing the character, where 1 was very methodical, very scary, very suspenseful, not a lot of deaths. Same goes with number 2, where it's a lot more elaborate and hokey and kind of took me out of it. Watching 3, it just puts me in a great mood for like horror film. I'm not a horror guy. I'm not really into horror, but the only types of horror that I actually like, the villain that I actually love out of all of them is actually Freddy, just because in my memory it's those elaborate kills, the fantasy kills, the one-liner quips that he does, which makes it fun. It's not just horror and suspense, it's also fun. It brings that little being an asshole element into the role. And
well, that's what makes this a good entry point into the series too. Like, it's kind of like the Star Trek 4 of this franchise, right? Because I would say Star Trek 4 you can watch without ever seeing anything Star Trek ever before that, not even seeing the first few films leading into that, because you can just look at Star Trek 4 as a couple of people from the future who need a whale. That's the setup. And Nightmare on Elm Street 3, as we just said earlier in this thing, you don't have to have seen the first 2 films. You can get into this movie without seeing them and have no problem getting what's going on. Sure, you could get more out of seeing at least the first film before seeing this, but it is such a great entry point for anybody who's not even a horror fan, because this film really does play up the fantasy element big time. And that helps.
Yeah. Feelings? Any last words?
No, just as Tom said, this is a perfect, again, this is a film that could be a standalone. You do not need to see any other films in the franchise. You walk right in. I think another film in the franchise that does the same thing, Tom, correct me if you disagree with this, but I believe the New Nightmare does the exact same thing.
In a way, but I think you almost have to have at least seen the first film to really appreciate.
They do set up a lot of the backstory though in New Nightmare, so you could watch it as a standalone.
You could, yes, it does work in that way. Yes, I agree with you.
Cool. That kind of brings us to the end of the show. Before we wrap things up completely, we have a little segment called the short version. So without further ado, let's set this up. Let's have this. We will be here with just a small little taste of what this movie's all about. The short version of A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3.
No, the short version.
Honey, I've got a guest.
And you don't want to keep him waiting.
That's right, I don't.
Everybody has bad dreams.
I hope you know what you're getting us into.
Welcome to prime time, bitch!
Who is he?
His name is Freddy Krueger.
Oh, she does say Freddy. Damn.
I am the Wizard Master.
Told you.
In my dreams, I'm beautiful and bad.
What's wrong, Joey? Feeling tongue-tied?
Well, according to Dr. Sims, you've been creating panic among the patients.
That's not true.
That girl.
I think Amanda's the only one who refers to him as Fred Krueger.
Her child, Freddy. The bastard son of 100 me.
She doesn't even say his name.
I'm a sick girl, Kristen. If you want to get better, you must trust me now.
But we need to know where his bones were hidden.
I don't know if you care whether Nancy lives or dies, but I do.
Okay, you got 5 minutes. They're in the TV room.
How do we find him, Kristen?
I said, where's the fucking servant?
Let's get high.
In the name of Lorik, Prince of Elves, demon be gone!
I don't believe in fairy tales. The souls of the children give me strength. Die.
Cool. That brings us to the end of the show. Before we leave you, please go ahead and follow Midnight's Edge at youtube.com/Midnight's Edge and Midnight's Edge After Dark. You can always follow Tom on Twitter at Thomas Connors Jr. And if you want to interact with me, with the show, it is at Meffistoe on Twitter, at Meffistoe79 on Instagram, and email the show at thereelmccoypodcast@gmail.com. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, we will be covering the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre with a horror film buff called Horror Amarada from Twitch. You're gonna get to know her if you don't know her. So go watch, you out there, go watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think it's in 72, 73?
73 or 4, yeah.
Yeah, 73, 74, somewhere in that region. Go watch the original. There's a remastered version on Amazon, I think, on Amazon Prime, but I'm not certain. Watch it. Come back to us next week. Same time, 8 p.m. UK, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific. And until then, see you later. Thank you, Tom, for joining us.
Thank you, Tom.
Hi, kids.
Always a pleasure.
Night.